Chapter 11. Whoso neglects learning in his youth loses the past and is dead for the future. Euripides. Dialogue with young aspirants. As I mentioned earlier, I am an accidental entrepreneur. No one from my family had any knowledge or background of business, and there was no one to guide us. My father, at the age of his retirement, took a risk, made an adventure, and started a tiny grocery shop in Dubai. That was the first time when we stepped into an unknown field. My father and I learned the ideas, tips, and functioning of business on our own. Initially, we faced hiccups, betrayal, and losses, but later, experience taught us a lot, and eventually we settled and progressed in business field. Based on my experience, I can tell you that starting any business is not as difficult as it is perceived to be. In fact, it is the only field where everyone can participate at any age and without any formal education. The only criteria to sustain here is your endurance, adaptability, and communication skills. So my appeal to the young aspirants from every section of society is to step into business daringly if they want. Just take that first step and then you will automatically get going. When I watch the dreams of prosperity in the eyes of youth, I see my own reflection in them. I just want to motivate them by saying, if Dhananjay Datar, an ordinary person, can become a billionaire, then why not you? I am narrating some more incidents that will be useful for the entrepreneurs. Simple requisite for business. Once I was asked by a business aspirant what the basic requisite for starting a business was. I simply replied, elementary, my dear friend. If you know the value of money and are able to count it, that's sufficient. Perhaps he thought I was joking. But the answer was actually a manifestation of my past experiences. When I started my career in business, I was only a high school graduate. I would often visit our client companies and meet the officials there. I would think myself inferior when I found that they were highly educated and some of them had even acquired their management degrees from reputed business schools or overseas universities. Because of this complex, I would prefer to talk as little as possible. But one incident dispelled my fear. One of our clients in Dubai was a big trading firm. The proprietor of that firm was an elderly millionaire. I would visit his office regularly to collect our payment checks. I noticed a strange thing there. The officials would make a mockery of their employer behind his back because of his illiteracy. Wonder of wonders. The owner was a primary school dropout. In one meeting, he asked casually about my educational qualifications, and I replied that I was a high school graduate. He exclaimed in appreciation, "Fantastic! You have learned a lot. Please do me a favor." He handed me a bunch of checks and asked me to read the amounts written on them slowly but aloud. As I was reading the amounts, I saw him verifying the figures, counting on his fingers. It surprised me, and I asked him the reason. He candidly replied, "Young man, I have not learned much. I can't understand the written amounts, so I calculate on fingers and tally them." I realized at that moment why his office staff had the habit of mocking him. As if he had read my mind, he smilingly said, "I know what comes to your mind. I am fully aware that my employees laugh at me for my illiteracy, but it makes no difference to me. I don't fall prey to this inferiority complex. I run my business successfully. Education alone is not the yardstick to evaluate a person. His skills are more important. Think the other way around. If I am a subject of mockery, why do all these highly educated people remain complacent working under a dropout person, whose business administration is superior? Let me tell you, I am not the only one in this city to be called an illiterate millionaire. We are many. Some of us are billionaires and can't even write words. They have only learned to trace their signature on checks and documents and are still fetching a fortune. He then gave me a precious piece of advice. He said, I don't underestimate the importance of education, but practical experience is much more important than bookish knowledge. The basic requisite of business is knowledge of money. Teach entrepreneurship at an early age. Once I was having a conversation with my friend at his home over a cup of tea. My friend happened to be an entrepreneur like me. As we were busy discussing the developments in our respective fields, suddenly the school-going son of my friend entered the room. My friend acquainted me with him. The little boy enthusiastically told his father, Dad, today our school has given us a task. They have provided each student a receipt book to collect building fund for the upcoming recreational facility. He then turned to me and politely asked, Uncle, would you like to donate to our school fund? I was about to draw my wallet appreciatively, but just then my friend interrupted and angrily commented, There is no need to go anywhere begging door to door for the donation. I will not tolerate if any of our neighbors insult you. Instead, I will pay you the whole amount. You just write any fictitious names you like on all the receipts and hand over the receipt book and the amount to your class teacher tomorrow. The boy left the room with disappointment. My friend turned to me and sarcastically said, We send our children to schools for learning moral values, and they teach their students to beg for funds from society. I shook my head in disagreement and asked my friend a simple question. Do you want your son to be an entrepreneur like you in future and carry forward your legacy? His reply was affirmative, to which I said, You are losing a good opportunity to introduce your son to the business world. My friend seemed puzzled over my remark and asked me the reason. I replied, Look, you just prevented your son from going outside to collect fund on behalf of his school. What you called begging is, in fact, a basic exercise of salesmanship. Let your son face people, convince them for donation, read their reactions and learn to improve his marketing. Perhaps some people will talk to him rudely and may insult him, but others will definitely encourage him. Let him gain all sorts of experiences. The first step of any business is smart salesmanship, and you are making a mistake by not teaching the kid the art of persuading, convincing, and winning the customers. My friend understood his mistake. Then he called his son, and we both donated to his school fund. The child's face lit up. Age is no limit for business. Some years ago, I met one of my schoolmates who had opted for a voluntary retirement from his high-profile job at the age of 50. His intention behind taking such a decision was to enjoy a decade actively before reaching the senior citizen stage. When I congratulated him and wished a happy and wonderful life ahead, his face became gloomy, much to my surprise. When asked the reason, he sighed. It seems that I have made a mistake in retiring too early. I have plenty of leisure time at hand now, but really don't know how to use it creatively. I suggested to him to take up entrepreneurship so that he would again invest some part of his time in creative work. He looked at me in bewilderment and said, I am too old for starting a new business. Besides, I spent all these years in service, and to acquire a different skill set will be difficult. His logic amused me, and I told him smilingly, Friend, it requires no precondition, reservation, age limit, or different skill set to step into business. Determination, hard work, and perseverance are the only qualities essential to get along. Customers, experience, and opportunities come automatically. I gave him the example of my father. He spent his entire service tenure working in different jobs and daringly ventured into business in his retirement age. He was enthusiastic, but a novice. He sensed a business opportunity and took the risk of investing his lifetime savings in an unknown field, that too in a foreign land. He succeeded only because he was ready to face hurdles and learn from mistakes. There are a number of inspiring examples of people globally who have demonstrated that age is not a limit to be an entrepreneur. I remember another example of a person who retired as a clerk from a company. While working in the accounts department, he had designed an innovative marketing model. He dreamed of being a millionaire. He didn't give up on his dream. Even after retirement, he began exploring clients for his model. At last, a chain of restaurants gave him the opportunity to implement his model for them. He worked hard and expanded the restaurant chain overseas. The partnership made him a billionaire in the next few years. He lived only 12 years after his retirement, but certainly achieved the goal. This is real enthusiasm, real confidence, and a real creative life. Let me quote a few lines from a poem titled Youth, written by Samuel Ullman. Youth means a temperamental predominance of courage over timidity, of the appetite for adventure over the love of ease. This often exists in a man of 60, more than a boy of 20. Nobody grows merely by the number of years. We grow old by deserting our ideas. Years may wrinkle the skin, but to give up enthusiasm wrinkles the soul. Worry, fear, self-destruct bows the heart and turns the spirit back to dust. Inspire the aspirers to grow. A decade ago, we emphasized on radio advertising to popularize our brand. Once we had decided to launch a new promotional campaign for our products. Since applying new ideas from life to business has always been my favorite strategy, I asked our advertising agency to run the campaign innovatively. I shared my idea of introducing more entertainment into the advertisements. Movies have so much impact on the public mind that the fans memorize and recite the famous dialogues of their favorite actors. I suggested to our agency to use such dialogues in our promotional content to be recorded in the style of that actor with the help of a skilled voiceover artist. The creative team of the agency liked the concept and decided to work on it. After some days, the agency submitted a budget for the advertisement series. It was far more expensive than my expectations. When I asked the reason, the agency told me that the professional voiceover artists were asking for a hefty charge as their remuneration, and there was no scope for any bargain. On hearing this, I advised the agency to search for any new and aspiring mimicry artist instead of the established seniors. Soon they found one young artist who was a struggler and was trying hard to make inroads into the film industry. He was humble and committed to his passion. He accepted our project and charged us reasonably. Later, our advertisements became so popular that people began listening and enjoying them frequently. That humble youth has now become a celebrity mimicry artist, actor, and anchor. His name is Raju Srivastav. This incident inspired me to help the strugglers, and soon it became a habit. Once a young sculptor from the small suburb of Badlapur near Mumbai heard my lecture on entrepreneurial development and got inspired. He corresponded with me and sent one sample artifact for my attention. It was a beautifully painted clay lamp. What fascinated me more was the way he packed the clay lamp so neatly and wrapped it carefully. I sensed his artistic and entrepreneurial skills and gave him an opportunity to exhibit his clay products in our Dubai store. He got an enthusiastic response from our overseas customers, and that was the stepping stone of his entrepreneurial career. He is now a seasoned exporter. His name is Nimesh Janwar. Friends, we should always inspire and help the youth with an aim to create a nationwide entrepreneurial ecosystem. A pat on their back and a little push can really create miracles. When I was in my 20s, I was a novice in business. I was being humiliated by the words like, "Business is not your cup of tea. You are better off serving someone." That time, a hard-working Muslim gentleman from Bangladesh named Mullah Chacha encouraged me and gave me the opportunity to earn the first profit of my life. Even today, I remember his inspiring words and the assuring pat on my back. Speak the customer's language. My initial days in Dubai were dull and lonely. The main reason was that I had a problem of communicating with the local customers. Dubai's local language is Arabic and international language is English. I was poor in English and Arabic was totally unfamiliar to me. I could only speak Hindi or Marathi. But very few customers would reciprocate in Indian languages. This dilemma not only made me nervous, but also isolated. I began hiding from the Arabic-speaking and English-speaking customers. Some white-collared customers would prefer to speak in fluent and elite English only, and that made the situation even more awkward for me. Even after figuring out that I struggled with English and would reply with only 3 words, yes, no, or thank you, they maliciously kept talking in eloquent English and enjoyed watching my embarrassment. This caused an inferiority complex within me. One day I was working in the shop as usual when an Arab customer dropped in. I warily faced him and greeted him in Arabic saying, "Subh al-khair," good morning, the only Arabic words I was familiar with. Hearing this, he thought that I could speak his language, and he continued the conversation in Arabic. Soon he noticed my silence and realized the situation. He wisely found a way and started communicating in sign language. He first pointed towards the commodity he wanted and then made a chopping-like action on his wrist. The meaning immediately flashed in my mind and I understood that he wanted half kg of that product. When I handed over the packet to him, he paid for it and waved his hand happily, saying, "Shukran, thank you." The body language of that Arab customer taught me a lot. I understood the importance of communicating in the customer's language. At the same time, I realized how easy and joyful it is to learn a foreign language from the natives. All of a sudden, my fear vanished and I resolved to learn both the languages, Arabic and English, by heart. The very next day, I started learning different Arabic words and applying them. In 6 months, I progressed to talking with my customers easily. Then I turned my attention to English. I joined a coaching class to polish my language and acquire conversational skills. The teacher was a pleasant, gentle person. He taught me various techniques of public speaking. This tutelage profited me in my business also. Being a multilingual definitely expands your reach to a large number of customers. I always offer this precious advice to all entrepreneurs who would like to expand their business globally. A quote of Nelson Mandela, the late South African leader, is worth memorizing. If you talk to a man in a language he understands, that goes to his head. If you talk to him in his own language, it goes to his heart. Work more, talk less. I was a novice when I stepped into the business field. Until then, I had had no background or experience of running a shop. I would trust everyone naively in the hope that they would guide me. But soon I realized that every person who shakes hands with us is not necessarily our friend. Business is an extremely competitive field, and here applies the rule: survival of the fittest. In those days, I would share the information of my business openly with others. If I met people at a party and someone asked me casually how it was going, I would begin talking extensively. I would tell them how my business was progressing, what my turnover was, and about the future plans of expansion. The listeners would congratulate me at the time. Later, it came to my notice that some of my important works were being delayed or denied without reason. For example, if I approached a locality to open a new store, the space would already be rented or the owner would simply refuse to lease it to me. I was quite surprised and began thinking, why would this happen? If I had completed all the necessary formalities, I couldn't get to the bottom of this. Later, I met an elder trader who was like a mentor to young entrepreneurs like me. I told him my problem. He thought for a moment and smilingly asked, "Son, try to remember if you have offended anyone knowingly or unknowingly." I said no. Then he thought for a moment and advised, "It seems that you talk more than necessary while in public. In business, the first thing to remember is to keep our cards hidden. Not everyone is pleased with the progress of their rivals. Some might even turn into backstabbers." I then learned an important lesson and changed myself into a taciturn person. If someone asked me how it was going, my reply would be very crisp. Okay, somehow meeting the expenses. I also stopped disclosing my future plans. It is necessary to understand the technique of when, where, and how to talk. Speak extensively with your customers, but be tight-lipped when you are with your competitors. Sometimes we have to be cautious about the people who are unnecessarily sweet-tongued. I used to seek the advice of a broker before setting up a new store. The person was very talkative, but surprisingly, he would constantly disapprove of the locations for unknown reasons. When I realized this, I distanced myself from him and started to look for spaces on my own. I stopped taking others' advice and began to open new stores directly. The idea worked well. I learned the second lesson of business wisdom from this incident. First, complete the task and then make the announcement. Today, I have a chain of 43 superstores spread across the GCC region, and all are successful ventures. I always remember the old proverb, "An empty vessel makes much noise." Advertising is the mother of trade. I never thought of advertising my business when I was a small shopkeeper. The word-of-mouth publicity among customers was sufficient for me in those days. But at one stage, especially when the chain of our Al-Adil stores began expanding, I had to think seriously about using media frequently as well as creatively. A small incident actually ignited the spark in my mind. There was a food trade exhibition in Dubai. Since I was interested in making new acquaintances, I visited the show. It was an amazing experience to watch the various stalls, new products, and novel technologies displayed there. My attention was particularly drawn to a stall which was more crowded. I headed over to watch. The stall was decorated aesthetically like a royal court. A beautiful model in majestic attire with a glimmering crown on her head sat on a throne. She was acting like a princess. Her maids were welcoming the visitors and the princess was gifting everyone a little velvet pouch. First, I thought The product was something expensive like saffron. But when I opened the pouch, it turned out to be a basmati rice sample. People were enjoying the dramatic and entertaining presentation. I really appreciated the company and their advertising and marketing teams for implementing such an innovative idea. Their product was actually simple, but they successfully imprinted on customers' mind that it was not an ordinary but a royal one. When I was studying the doctorate program in business management, our professor would say, "In alphabets, as A is close to B, so is advertising to business." I remembered his words and was determined to apply the same technique in my business. The first step I took was to renovate and modernize my stores. I hired an interior design consultant to make a beautiful display of all the products. Then I turned to print media, radio, television, outdoor, etc. Besides sponsoring various other events, we set a tradition of publicizing our own corporate events. We usually invite a popular celebrity actress from Bollywood to inaugurate new stores. Such events attract a huge crowd of fans and our purpose is achieved. I have always insisted that my advertising agency should create entertaining and appealing advertisements for our brand. From my experience, I can tell you that to grow and succeed in business, you have to advertise not only your products, but yourself too. Your pleasing personality, immaculate attire, soft tone of speaking, and smiling face all act as powerful advertising tools. The simplest and cheapest way of advertising is word-of-mouth publicity. It can be acquired by giving friendly and respectful treatment to your customers. Next is the aesthetic display of showrooms and attractive packaging of products. Today, another non-expensive and powerful medium is catching the attention of customers: social media. You can use it wisely to your benefit. I like a quote by Ted Turner: "Early to bed, early to rise. Work like hell and advertise." Be an optimist and an opportunist. I consider myself fortunate as I always got valuable advice from senior traders. I still remember the day when I earned the first profit of my life. I would purchase the spices at a wholesale rate from Dira, Dubai, and sell them later in retail at our shop. Once, an experienced Bangladeshi trader named Mullah Chacha insisted to me to purchase a bag of quality red chili powder. Since I had no money left to buy it at once, I declined his offer. Then Mullah Chacha gave me a valuable business tip by saying, "Son, I know your struggle. All days are not equal. You will also overcome the challenges, but always remain an optimist and an opportunist. Don't let good things slip out of your hands." I followed his advice and purchased the chili powder on credit. When I sold it to my customers, they liked it and demanded more. I got a considerable profit which boosted my confidence. I remember an anecdote from an Indian businessman in the 19th century. His name was Panchanan Das. Those were the days of British rule in India. Panchanan was a poor orphan living in a small village in Bengal province. In his early youth, he shifted to a small port town named Khansama and began his career as an assistant to a tobacco trader. Once it so happened that the prices in tobacco market had fallen heavily. Panchanan's master started worrying as he had a huge stock stored in the warehouse. Panchanan kept reassuring his master. One day, he had gone to the port as usual and saw 2 ships anchored there. He came to know that they were loaded with a large stock of tobacco. Panchanan knew the price volatility in the market very well. He purchased the entire stock at a throwaway price in his master's name. When he returned to his office, his master happily told him that the rates of tobacco in the Calcutta market had begun to soar. Panchanan immediately rushed to the port again and sold the stock he possessed at a higher rate. He earned a huge profit of rupees 10,000. He honestly gave all the money to his master and told him about his adventure. The master was so pleased with Panchanan that he awarded the entire amount back to him and said, "Young man, I see an able businessman in you. You should no longer remain anyone's servant. Business favors adventurous people who smell and grab opportunity well in time. You are one of those. I relieve you from my service. Go and start your own business with this money." Panchanan obeyed his master's advice and started his own business. Later, he became one of the richest traders in the entirety of Bengal. The words of that tobacco trader or Mullah Chacha are time immemorial. A quote by Winston Churchill is worth remembering. A pessimist sees difficulty in every opportunity. An optimist sees opportunity in every difficulty. Change is the law of life. Initially, we managed our shops in Dubai with a traditional viewpoint. The customers would ask for the things they needed from across the counter. The salesman would then fetch the products from the shelves and prepare a bill. The products were neither arranged systematically nor displayed attractively, and only we knew where a particular item was placed. The customers didn't have the chance to handle the groceries themselves. Even the billing was done traditionally. People would form a queue and wait for their turn to pay. One incident was crucial in helping me change my old-fashioned perspective and bring about a transformation in my business. My sons were studying in secondary school then. One day I noticed that my elder son Rishikesh was delaying a haircut. I asked him to accompany me to our usual reliable salon. He declined by saying, "I am not coming to that old-fashioned salon. All my friends visit a modern men's parlor. The parlor is always crowded and admission there is only by prior appointment. I have also booked an appointment there and am waiting for my turn to come." I casually inquired about the rates in the parlor, to which he replied that they charge 100 dirham for a single visit. I was shocked and burst out, "My God! I pay only 20 dirham for my monthly visit to the saloon, and you are going to spend 5 times more. It is very expensive. What is so extraordinary in this parlor?" Rishikesh smiled and answered, "Come with me and see for yourself." I was curious as to why this parlor was so popular, so I went with him and realized that he was telling the truth. The parlor looked less like a hair salon and more like an air-conditioned corporate office. The interiors were well conceived and aesthetically decorated. The employees were hospitable and prompt. The salon section was amazingly clean and equipped with state-of-the-art machines and technology. They had a facility of showing each customer his face on a computer and suggesting which haircut perfectly suited him. No wonder customers were ready to pay such exorbitant rates. It was a result of the luxurious amenities and excellent service. I grasped the message quickly and left behind my orthodox attitude. The first thing I did was to refurbish my shops and turned them into aesthetically built superstores that were modern and spacious. I arranged the merchandise neatly and attractively. The customers were provided with baskets and carts and also had the chance to select and handle the products on their own. The billing became faster with the help of computers and barcode scanners. This helped my business to take a quantum leap. The chain of Al Adil superstores began to expand rapidly. A quote by John F. Kennedy is worth remembering. Change is the law of life, and those who look only to the past or present are certain to miss the future. Wealth makes many friends, but once I was traveling to Mumbai when I encountered a peculiar incident. During a conversation with my co-passenger, he casually asked me whether I was carrying any presents for my friends or relatives. I replied in negative, saying that neither I nor my friends back in India ever expected any gift from each other, and our friendship was solely based on trust. He smiled and congratulated me for having such a nice friend circle. A little surprised, I asked him why he had done so. He told me about his frustrating experience with his friends. This person, after getting an overseas job, had initially gifted various novel articles to his friends, relatives, and neighbors. But soon he was fed up with their rising expectations. What was more astonishing was that they wanted these gifts for free. The ongoing demands included jewelry, liquor, perfumes, and the latest gadgets. He and his family became so disturbed that they started avoiding these acquaintances. At last, he hatched a plan. He pretended that he had lost his overseas job and started working somewhere with daily wages. To convince them, he even began wearing simple and faded clothes. Each time he landed at the airport, he would first change his clothes and then go home empty-handed. This trick worked well, and since then, no one asked him for a gift. It reminded me of the tragic story of a person named Amin Bhai. He was from a wealthy family. Amin Bhai's nature was kind and philanthropic. He would always be ready to help needy people. Even his friend circle was vast, and he liked to arrange feasts frequently, taking the expenses upon himself. Slowly, his friends began taking advantage of his naivety. Some of them even borrowed large sums from him. Meanwhile, Amin Bhai's father passed away, and the ancestral property was divided among the three sons. Amin Bhai got his one-third share. Actually, this was the first warning signal, but Amin Bhai overlooked it. He continued with his charities and luxurious lifestyle as usual. This continued only for a decade, and then his wealth began to erode. He had to sell his property. Eventually, Amin Bhai became penniless. To top it all off, he was diagnosed with cancer. He had nothing to meet the expenses of his medical treatment. Amin Bhai helplessly pleaded to every friend, but most of them avoided him and acted distant with him. Only a handful of them remembered his generosity and extended their help. It was to no avail. Amin Bhai soon passed away. A proverb in the Bible is worth remembering. Wealth makes many friends, but the poor is separated from his neighbor. Relations are more valuable than money. Someone once forwarded an inspirational message to me which says, "Cherish your relations." The whole world watched Taj Mahal, except Mumtaz, for whom it was built. How important the sentence and the underlying meaning are. It reminded me of an old and tragic incident which is an eye-opener for those who forget everything while chasing after money. There was a snack manufacturer in Mumbai. His brand was so popular among customers that he became a millionaire instantly and started making a hefty turnover every day. Alas, history repeated itself, and the instant success and gleam of wealth made him haughty and greedy. He had lent a sum of 1 million rupees to his married sister as her family was passing through a bad patch financially. After a couple of years, He began demanding the repayment of his loan, but his sister was helpless and couldn't return the amount. She honestly assured her brother that she would repay his loan once her bad times were over. The brother didn't believe her. He suspected that his sister was hatching a plan to spoil his fortune. The greed made him so anxious that he started visiting his sister's house every month to enquire about his loan. This made the sister irritated. One day she requested him with tearful eyes not to insist on returning his money constantly. This led to a bitter, heated argument between them, and finally, the aggrieved sister asked the brother if her death itself would make him believe her words. The brother was not ready to listen to anything and kept demanding his money back. Overcome with sadness, she committed suicide by barricading and hanging herself in a nearby room. The brother was shocked to see the dead body of his beloved sister. He began to sob and bitterly repented for his behavior. In a grief-stricken and desperate state of mind, he walked to a nearby railway station and flung himself under a running train. Had he controlled his avarice, 2 valuable lives would not have been lost. Friends, the relations in our life and not our money make us prosperous. Money can be earned anytime and lost money can also be recovered anytime. But lost relations are not that easy to rebuild. Our family, relatives, and friends are the real asset. They are the best inspirers and medicines to our agony. I also realized this truth when I faced death. If you want to help someone from the heart, never expect return and repayment. Try to attain and cherish the real happiness in your life instead of money. A quote by Alfred A. Montepert comes to my mind. The main source of our wealth is goodness, the affections and the generous qualities that God admires in a world full of greed. A diamond in the dark has no value. Our Al Adil trading company was flourishing and getting acknowledgement in the GCC region. Despite being the managing director of a successful company, I had initially kept myself from the limelight and pompousness. I believed in the motto of simple living. But one incident taught me how self-publicity is also important in business. I had cherished a dream from childhood to own a luxury car. Fortunately, with God's grace, it came true. I purchased a posh Rolls-Royce Phantom car. One day I went to my bank to submit some documents. The manager of the bank knew me and my business very well. He congratulated me about the new car and casually asked where I had parked it. Since the bank branch was around the corner of my residence, I hadn't brought the car with me but had walked. So I replied that the car was parked in my building premises. The manager was astonished to hear it. He smiled and advised me, "Sir, if I may suggest something, do you know how valuable your car is? Not monetarily, but in public sentiment. Your car's model is the first of its kind in the whole UAE, and the company has manufactured only 18 such phantom cars in the last 105 years. I think you should not lose a good chance of publicity. Travel in the car frequently and park it on the road to get it noticed by everyone." Since I was averse to boasting about luxuries unnecessarily in public, I remained silent over his advice. The manager understood that I was not fully convinced. He once again insisted, "Okay, sir, if you want to ascertain the veracity of my words, try a simple trick. Keep your car parked on the famous Jumeirah beach at peak hours for a week and let your chauffeur just stand beside it waiting." Curiously, I followed his advice and witnessed the wonder. Jumeirah Beach in Dubai Being a tourist attraction point and also a leisure destination of Dubai's elite class is always crowded. My car, being the first phantom model in Dubai, caught everyone's attention. People asked the chauffeur about the owner of the handsome car, and I became famous overnight. Afterwards, the car became my indirect business card and gave me access, respect, and prestige everywhere. Later, I thanked that bank manager who enlightened me. He politely replied, "Sir, there was a certain reason behind my advice. Your company is financially robust and prospering. The best way to convey this message to the business world is not the statistics, but through word of mouth. Remember that a diamond kept in the dark has no value. It requires light to sparkle." I am reminded of a quote by Richard Branson. "Free publicity and word of mouth is probably the best and cheapest form of advertising. Learn to use it to your advantage." Save enough for your old age. A couple of months back, I read a pitiable story of an old Indian businessman in the newspaper. Once, he had been a billionaire and the chairman of his world-renowned group. When he became a senior citizen, he handed over his entire business empire, rights, wealth, and other properties to his only son and began spending his retired life in a small bungalow, which was owned by the companies. He hoped to spend his golden age happily and peacefully there, but later the situation took a very strange turn. Some differences of opinion between the father and the son took such a bitter turn that the son, now the sole decision-making authority of the group, misused his rights and simply evicted his father from the bungalow and deprived him of his legitimate rights. Ultimately, the old man had to appeal to the judiciary to protect his shelter. Once a business tycoon, he had now turned into a deceived, penniless, and helpless old man. What a tragic game of destiny! It reminded me of another story of the same sort which happened here in Dubai. A businessman was wealthy but illiterate from the beginning. When he grew old, he gave the power of attorney to his young son. It was a grave mistake. When the son came to know about the huge bank balance in his father's account, greed awakened in his mind to make instant fortune. He started drawing large amounts and began accumulating the money in his own account. Since the father was illiterate, he remained in the dark for a long time, until one day the bank informed him about the insufficient balance in his account. The old man was completely robbed by his own son and became empty-pocketed. He spent his remaining days begging his son. I don't mean to say that such breaches of trust have become common nowadays. I am also not blaming the new generation grossly, but I honestly feel that in old age only two partners truly help you: your spouse and your savings balance. My father was very particular about following this rule. When he retired and handed over his business to me, he made an agreement with me under which I had to give him a fixed share from our annual profit as owner's right. I kept this practice continued year after year. Once I asked him the reason behind his decision, and he replied in crisp words, "One should be independent of others and not become financially helpless till death. That is when the old age really becomes golden age." You will certainly remember my words in the future. My father lived his life actively, happily, and independently till his last breath. All senior citizens must remember a quote by Oscar Wilde. "When I was young, I thought that money was the most important thing in life. Now that I am old, I know that it is."